Forget France. The French can be annoying. Come to Greece. We're nicer.
So?
We're nicer.
Dudley Moore is an advertising man who finds new inspiration for his work after he's committed to an insane asylum in Crazy People. It's one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, and I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is called Crazy People, and it's really a mixed bag. When it tries to be funny, it often is, but when it tries to be romantic or compassionate, it's quite awful. The story idea is simple enough. Dudley Moore plays a worn-out advertising man who gets so disgusted with his business he starts writing ads that tell the truth in bold, repellent fashion. His partner, played by Paul Reiser, is appalled.
Buy Volvos. They're boxy, but they're good. We know they're not sexy. This is not a smart time to be sexy anyway, with so many new diseases around. Be safe instead of sexy. Right. Volvo. Boxy, but good. Are you crazy?
I thought this would appeal to a no-nonsense type consumer.
His employers check Moore into a mental institution where he is quickly befriended by Daryl Hannah, a patient there. And in a group therapy session, she tries to recruit some helpers for him because, much to his surprise, Dudley Moore's ads have become international hits.
Who here wants to be an ad man?
Who here wants to be a fire engine?
The romantic plot between Moore and Hannah is a complete bore on the level of grammar school writing, and somebody put too much music in this movie.
I'm scared. If I went out, I'd want to know that you would be there.
I'd be there. I'd be the man standing next to you. You'd recognize me. I'd be the one who was smiling.
Now, what the studio hasn't provided for me to show you are scenes involving the ads, which are quite bold and vulgar and often very funny. One ad for the Sony Corporation involves the argument that Japanese products are better because Asians are shorter and thus sit closer to the high-tech products they work on assembly lines. Caucasians, the ad says, are just too tall. Well, I can recommend this movie only for the ads. It's too bad they didn't write a credible script to surround the funny material. They made this movie with only a half-baked script.
I agree with you. The ads are funny. I laughed loudly at the ads.
I heard you.
At the rest of the movie, I was left disinterested, especially by this love affair. Now, one thing I did notice about Daryl Hannah in this film, as I noticed in Roxanne, the movie she made with Steve Martin, is that she's very good as an ordinary type person. She often plays these very strange characters, and she's very good as this kind of person. But the problem is there's no chemistry between her and Dudley Moore. It's just a given in the movie. It's never explained or made convincing. And the whole love story is so sappy and soapy and corny that it simply doesn't work. I wish they'd had the nerve to go ahead and make this whole movie with the same daring brazenness that they made the ads with.
Why not make it all about the ads? Sure. Why have this love story? Why even have the Daryl Hannah character in there? It's ridiculous. It's like Gene Wilder has done some of these things where they've had these strange love interests in these comedy pictures that I don't know what they're hedging.
What the whole thing smells like is that a screenwriter wrote a really hard-edged comedy, and some script doctors, you know, that leave the patient for dead on the table, got in there and said, oh, we have to take this originality and somehow force it into a mold of conventional romance.
We need a female lead.
Right,
There's no need for her character. And also, the stuff with the other patients at the asylum is all stupid material.
Okay, next movie. And our next movie is a very tricky psychological thriller named Impulse, starring Teresa Russell, that wonderful actress, as an undercover cop with a dangerous attraction to the seamier side of her work. In the movie, Russell works as a decoy, dressing up like a hooker and then calling up her police backup friends to make arrests. Sometimes things don't work out according to plan.
Hey, Frank, we can make a deal. The stairs. Get her.
Russell is a lonely and frustrated woman who sometimes fantasizes about what it would be like to really work as a hooker. And one night, while she's tired and discouraged and alone in a bar, temptation walks in, and on an impulse, she goes along.
I feel like getting on a plane and going someplace I've never been before.
Feel like where? I mean, for instance.
Paris?
Well, let's go. I mean it.
Come on, let's go. I can't. I'm a working girl. I mean,
Suppose I gave you the plane fare.
What she doesn't know is that the sleazeball is a criminal who has been marked for assassination by the mob.
what am I doing? Get me out of here.
Russell reports the murder to 911 and then leaves before the police arrive. But a hostile assistant DA, played by Jeff Fahey, begins to suspect her, and he even wonders if she was moonlighting as a prostitute at that murder scene.
Tell me what happened that night. Huh? What happened?
It was after the Moonoff bust. I was really hyped. And on the way home, I got a flat tire. So while it was being fixed, I went across the street to the bar.
Who was there? Prawn?
He bought me a drink. I thought...
Then you buy something else, Lottie.
Teresa Russell is one of the best actresses in the movies, and she does a spellbinding job here as a woman who gets herself into more and more trouble. What makes Impulse so interesting is that it avoids most of the pitfalls of the usual crime movie and simply follows her story one step at a time as a guilty impulse leads her into a net of danger. There are ways in which this film resembles the French classic Pickpocket, in which the psychological study is more important than the plot, and it suggested that some cops get into the job because they have an unhealthy fascination with crime. The screenplay by John DeMarco and Lee Chapman is ingeniously constructed, but the real surprise here is the powerful direction by Sandra Locke. This is a very good thriller.
I think so, too. And, you know, when I saw this picture, I thought of one other film which has many of the same themes. We've just reviewed it, and this film blows that film out of the water completely, and that's Blue Steel. I mean, it has the same kind of a thing with a police officer, a woman police officer, getting involved and then getting hooked up with dangerous people. But this film felt real. And I think you should credit not only Sandra Locke, but also Teresa Russell. I've followed her career ever since Straight Time with Dustin Hoffman. She was a teenage actress, I think, at the time. And she's just been in one terrific risk-taking film after another. Like Kathleen Turner, she's not afraid to explore sexuality on the film. This picture, I think, may also suggest that if they don't have an unhealthy interest in criminality when they get into the job, that by being in this job, in this strange world, they can develop such an attraction.
And what's interesting, too, is that they don't just show her as some kind of a sexual psychotic who wants to get into this. They show her so discouraged by the fact that the male chauvinist that she works for on the police force puts her down all the time. She's out there on a limb. She's putting her life on the line. Then when the violence explodes, she has to walk away from it and somehow go home, but she's all worked up. She's tired, and somehow all of these forces work together. It's very... Now, Sandra Locke made one other picture as a director, Rat Boy, and I didn't like it. I didn't think it was much of a picture. When I saw she had directed this one, I thought, well, what will it be like? You know, she must have learned something. This is as well directed as any movie I've seen in a long time.
It's a very, very strong film, and I think that it showed that her behavior, the Teresa Russell character's behavior, you know, some guys go into a bar and drink when they get exhausted. She flirts with danger sexually, and it seems credible. It's a strong picture.
Very interesting.
Coming up next, a rare screen appearance by comic actress Elaine May and her daughter Jeannie Berlin. The movie is a comic mystery called In the Spirit.
That terrible apartment, I would just like to...
A lackluster comedy called In the Spirit about a couple of women who end up on their own, away from the men in their lives and involved in a murder mystery. Elaine May plays a corporate wife whose husband, Peter Falk, has lost his job. That's in part why they end up staying in a small bedroom in the home of Marlo Thomas, a New York decorator, health food nut, and New Age philosopher.
Oh, many, many people faint when their consciousness is first opened. The light's so dazzling. Oh, I should have given you this first. It's a book by Shirley MacLaine, and it describes this whole phenomenon.
It's so exciting. This doesn't happen to everybody. I'm so happy for you.
She's crazy.
Yes, but she has wonderful taste.
Eventually, Elaine May moves out of the apartment, but she is soon under attack, which she confesses to ditzy Marlo Thomas. This is a comedy about language as much as anything else.
And then suddenly, a flashlight just came out of the darkness, aimed right toward my face, and then a hand came toward me.
Oh, my God.
A gloved hand.
Materialization.
What?
Was it a white light?
It was a flashlight.
Now, don't do that. Don't interpret.
I don't know what you're talking about. What's the matter with you? Are you on some kind of herb?
Eventually, the two women are on their own in a rural cabin, ready to confront the killer.
He goes to the front door. We got something really heavy on the beam. It falls on him. It knocks him out. We shoot him. He goes up into the attic. He can get up there. And then he asks us where Crystal's book is. We tell him. He reaches in and we shoot him. No! No, we don't shoot him. He gets electrocuted. And we tell everybody he had a heart attack.
I've never been this frightened.
Why? For the first time, we're really ready for him.
Not of him, of you.
Nothing funny there. The script of In the Spirit was co-written by Jeannie Berlin, Elaine May's daughter, who was an Oscar nominee in 1972 for the very funny The Heartbreak Kid. She got her mother to appear in this movie and her mother's friend, Peter Falk. But here's another example, like Crazy People, of a film going into production, I think, without a fully realized script. Individual exchanges are funny. Elaine May has a very good ear, and so there are words that she says here and that she picks up on in the discussions that are amusing. But the story has no drive, no drama, no reason to be told. It's only a cut above a TV sitcom.
You know, I think you're right that they didn't really think the script through, because if they had, why did they kill the two most interesting characters in the movie?
Peter Falk.
Not necessarily I'm giving away anything that they literally kill them. Let's just put it that Peter Falk and Jeannie Berlin both disappear, leaving people that we don't really care that much about. And so that the movie just becomes a totally confusing mishmash with this voiceover narration that tries to build some kind of pattern that doesn't fit, and people wandering around in a plot that doesn't seem to have any idea where it's going. It was really a shapeless film.
When we come back, The Gods Must Be Crazy 2, a sequel of sorts to the cult comedy hit that ran for years in some cities.
Oh, it's your way of greeting. Oh, we do it this way.
Our next movie is named The Gods Must Be Crazy 2, and in a way, this sequel was inevitable since the original film literally ran for years in some cities, 3 years in Paris alone. What's surprising is that the sequel is also very entertaining and in a tradition of whimsical physical comedy that is hardly ever seen in the movies anymore. The movie opens with a sister and brother who unwisely investigate a water trailer on a truck. They've never seen anything like this before. The truck is being operated by big game poachers who are confronted by the father of the two children.
You come with us, you get in there. You get in there.
Meanwhile, an American attorney is marooned in the bush with a research scientist who gets her to help him try to find lunch. The attorney and the scientist get lost in a plane so small and clever, it becomes one of the characters in the movie. Now, I don't know if a plane can be clever, but that plane almost has a personality of its own, and it reminded me of Jacques Tati's goofy little car in the movie Mr. Hulot's Holiday. The whole movie is kind of a throwback to an earlier, gentler kind of comedy. We've had so many movies recently based on insult humor, physical humiliation, sexual situations, and innuendo that it was refreshing to enjoy the gentle, creative visual humor of this film. The director, Jamie East, also made the original Gods Must Be Crazy, and again this time he doesn't just have people standing around reciting sitcom lines to one another. He works hard to involve them in complicated comic situations, physical humor that keep paying off during the entire movie. The first movie seemed like a fluke. This time he knows exactly what he's doing, and for a change, I enjoyed the sequel more than the original.
I wasn't a big fan of the original, and I am not a big fan of this one either. And you know, it was physical comedy. I mean, you're either with this or you're not. And some of the stuff I didn't think was particularly inventive, and did have sexual situations in terms of the woman getting her dress caught up in the tree and all this sort of stuff. And I just didn't. I didn't think it was very funny. The kids are cute. And I suppose I was intrigued with the situation of them falling into the water there, but then they do a lot of speed-up camera stuff, and you know, and elephants or things in animals running into trees and this kind of thing. I didn't get.
Well, a couple of the situations where people run into trees are pretty funny. The movie uses obvious physical humor.
Yeah, obvious.
It uses corny approaches
Yes,
from
I
time
agree.
to time, but the fact is that it kind of won me over. It was something new. It's a physical location we haven't seen before. It's situations we haven't seen before. In the earlier film, he has a lot of fun with a Jeep. This time it's an airplane. The character, incidentally, who starred in the original film, reappears this time as the father of those kids, and he has an interesting situation or two where he reaches over and takes away a gun. He doesn't know what it is, so he just takes it away from the guy who's threatening him with it.
Well, okay, I can't think I can argue out of a laugh, and I don't think you can argue me into one. I sat
Okay,
there
I laughed. You didn't. Coming up next, an unlikely love story between a white corporate executive and a black woman who cleans his office. It's called Mama, There's a Man in Your Bed.
Called Mama, There's a Man in Your Bed, and it was directed by Colleen Serrault, the same French woman who made 3 Men in a Cradle, upon which the big American hit 3 Men and a Baby was based. I don't think this new film, however, is worth remaking, although it does have a few moments. Mama, There's a Man in Your Bed tells the unlikely love story between a white corporate executive and the black woman who cleans his office. He winds up hiding out in her apartment after she uncovers some corporate intrigue in his yogurt company.
Je m'excuse de vous parler comme ça, Monsieur Blendé. Et voilà ce que vous devriez faire. Vous devriez rappeler Monsieur Cloquet et vous lui dites comme ça. Cloquet, je suis dans mon bureau, tout est découvert, et puis vous accrochez. Vous voulez savoir ce qui va se passer? Eh bien, 10 minutes après, Cloquet, il arrivera ici, ventre à terre. Il ouvrira cette porte et dira, qu'est-ce qui est découvert?
His presence stuns one of her children. After her children get over the shock, they accept this new man in their mother's life. I think the actors are better than the story here. Fermine Richard is particularly fine as the cleaning woman. She manages to be bright and yet restrained in her subservient role, and yet she's so good that you can't help but want the movie to be more substantial. Instead, we're stuck with the silly story of infighting at a yogurt company and with the oh-so-cute scenes of the children reacting to the odd situation. One of what I'd prefer are more scenes between the man and the woman. This movie is slick, but I don't think it's very substantial.
Once again, what you have here, and you see this so often in the movies these days, is a very, very interesting, unique opening situation that is then resolved in terms of absolutely standard formula. The movie starts with characters who, in and of themselves, are very, very, very interesting.
And well played.
And the way that it constructs itself, so the woman who overhears all conversations, who knows what's in the wastebasket, who knows everything that's going on in this company better than the owner does, and then tells him, walks into his office one day, tells him everything about his company, everything about corporate intrigue, everything about his wife and his wife's mistress, and everything like this. And he does, how do you know all this stuff? And she knows because nobody sees her, but she sees everything. That should have been the basis for the entire movie, instead of putting everything into this formula at the end, which dissipates all of the dues that have already been paid.
You know, we at the top of the show, crazy people, same problem, interesting situation, and then they throw it off. It's like, well, they don't have any guts, I guess. I mean, it's harder, but also it's hard work. It would be harder to write a story involving these two characters and really following them and really having them, and they do it in a light way. I mean, you don't have to do it. I'm not asking for, you know, high drama in some sense, but just deal with the characters you've created.
Sometimes I think there must be movie police enforcing any attempt to make an original script. You know, guys that come in and fiddle with stuff and say, oh, this is too original, it has to be turned at the end into some kind of a formula the audience has seen 1,000 times before. Otherwise, how can you explain movies that are so original at the outset and so lockstep at the end?
Well, it's often been said that people don't know how to write a third act, and that's what happens here. Only in this case, they can write a second or third.
Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for Crazy People, the Dudley Moore comedy with great satire but a sappy love story. 2 thumbs up, though, for Impulse, the psychological thriller with splendid acting by Teresa Russell and great direction by Sandra Locke. We both voted thumbs down for In the Spirit, the shapeless screwball comedy with Elaine May and Marlo Thomas. A split decision on The Gods Must Be Crazy, too. I like the gentle physical humor. Gene thought it was corny. And finally, 2 fairly reluctant thumbs down for Mama, There's a Man in Your Bed. The setup is so interesting, it's a shame the payoff is so routine. And by the way, in reviewing that film, I talked about the wife's mistress. That makes it sound a little more intriguing perhaps than it is. I meant to say the wife's lover and the hero's mistress, which...
We still don't recommend the film, and of the pictures, Impulse is the one, and I have to see it. I suspect that with that title, that people might stay away from it because they think it either is real sordid or just dull. It's a very good thriller.
It's an interesting personality study, and she does do this on an impulse. It's the kind of thing that anyone could do that you wouldn't ever think you could do it. Maybe just one day you make a mistake, and then you really pay for it.
It's a real strong film. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with more new movies, including Miami Blues, starring Alec Baldwin from The Hunt for Red October as a psychotic killer being stalked by an over-the-hill cop played by Fred Ward. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.